All right, started recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the UU Virtual Roundtable. My name is Sarah Reyes, and I'll be today's moderator. Just some things to remember. We will be recording and uploading these onto the UUCLC's YouTube page. So in case you want to share it with anybody or you want to go back and rewatch it, it'll be available there either tomorrow or Tuesday. I'm thinking tomorrow, though. And some other things. Hold up, gotta admit this person. Please stay muted, at least during more of the lengthier discussion. If you have questions, just let our speaker or I know, and we'll let you ask the questions. Today we have Walt Rubel, and he'll be talking about how, in a very different year this has been, how media coverage could change this upcoming election and everything revolving around that. So you can take over now, Walt.
Okay, great. Yes, this is actually the third time that I've been invited to speak in front of you guys. And the one consistent that has been true all three of those times is that I don't have a presentation prepared like the more professional people who come speak to you on Sundays that I've occasionally had a chance to see. I have a topic and I have some opinions and some ideas about the topic, and I hope that we can stimulate a discussion. And I don't know, in terms of questions, that's what I want. I don't want this to be me talking by myself. And that was real easy to do when I could look out into the room and see everybody. It's a little bit more challenging now, but let's make this work. If you want to jump in with a question, I'll shut up, and that will be a lot better to do it that way. I wanted to talk about the election because I think it's strange. In some ways it's omnipresent, and in some ways I feel like it's almost being ignored. And all of how does the media cover it, and probably a better way to put that topic. One of the things I'm real concerned about is how do voters get information about local candidates. In terms of the presidential race, there's way more information than any of us will ever need to make up our mind on that one. I suspect most of us made up our minds long ago. But when it comes to the House race in your district or the county commission race, a lot of these candidates are running for the first time. And traditionally, what they would do is they would get out there and knock door to door. They would hold town hall meetings. They would hold meet and greets at local restaurants. They would do all of those, what we call retail politics, ways to get out and not just spread their message, but meet the voters and give voters a chance to look them in the eye and kind of take their measure. So now, for the first time in my life, we have an election where you can't do that. It also happens, in my opinion, to be an incredibly important election, not just on the presidential level, which goes without saying. And I don't want to talk about that. There will be lots of folks to talk about that one. But on the Congressional District 2 race, my column this week was my belief that if Xochitl Torres-Small is able to win re-election, when you look at this district being held by Harold Runnels, a Democrat, and then Joe Skeen and Steve Pierce, Republicans, for so long, my theory, and I could be wrong, but my theory is the district has proven to be more loyal to the person than the party. And if Xochitl can get in there and establish herself and run next time as a two-term incumbent and really have a record to run on, I think that may give her a chance to establish that as a Democratic seat, where it's been a Republican seat, for the last 30, however long since Joe Skeen got in. Since Harold Runnels died, it's been a Republican seat. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I thought I would start with where do voters go to get information? And this is a chance for me to plug what I'm doing with KTAL Community Radio. Every Wednesday from 8 to 10 in the morning, Peter Goodman and I are the co-hosts of a show called Speak Up Las Cruces. And we are doing candidate interviews. We've already started, and we're going to do them every Wednesday throughout the election. Beyond that, KRWG is also in partnership with the League of Women Voters, doing forums as well. They have done 2 already, and those are posted on their website, so you can go look at those. One of the things that's a little bit different, I guess, for lack of a better word, several years ago when Steve Pierce was running against Mary Lee Souls and I was still at the Sun News, we partnered with KRWG for debates in that race and I think a few others. And they had a rule that you couldn't mention your opponent, which just seemed, yeah, thank you, Paul. I mean, yeah. So
I've never heard of that before.
I had not either. I got them to change that rule for our debates, but for their debates, that's back. And so, yeah, and of course, if you're clever enough, there are ways you could get around that rule. Well, some people think this, or, you know, I mean, you could, there are ways to get around the rule. But I thought what I would do is, before I get off that, the other ways to get information, I was looking today, and most of the candidates have a campaign website. Some of them are better than others. You know, some of them just give you their life story and, you know, I love liberty and apple pie. Some of them do have details on the issues. So that's another place you can go. I'm certain that the Sun News and the Bulletin will do reporting. What the Sun News will not do is editorial board meetings with the candidates like we did forever.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was just going to say, I remember when I first moved here in 2008, and I didn't know candidates, and that kind of interaction I thought was very valuable to a voter. I mean, very valuable.
I thought so too. The other part of that is I don't expect they'll do any kind of endorsements on their opinion page.
Oh.
They really don't have much of an opinion page anymore. And it wouldn't be fair, I don't think, to do that without going through the same process we did, where you invite everybody in and you sit down with them and you really, if all you have is a reporter talking to them on the phone, which is I suspect how they'll do it, it's really, you know, so some people will think that's a good thing. You know, no more newspaper endorsements. Every year we used to catch heat. You know, how can you have a story on the front page, you know, portending to be unbiased, and then 3 pages later you're telling us who to vote for? So this solves that. I'm not sure it's, you know, it solves it because they're not spending the resources, not because they made a decision, but it's solved nonetheless. I thought what I would do is just go through the races and go ahead, Paul, do you want to jump in?
No, I just said that's good.
Okay. And I, you know, this is a little bit self-serving. Like I said, I'm kind of plugging our show on KTAL, but I thought I would do it in the order that we have done them. And we've done 4 weeks or 3 weeks so far. So 6 different races. And just quickly go through each race and give everybody who wants to a chance to jump in and ask questions or make comments. We started with the county races. County clerk and county treasurer are the 2 on the ballot this year. The race between county clerk is Amanda Lopez Askin and Cheryl DeYoung. Amanda Lopez Askin took over after Scott Kraling was forced to step down, which, you know, I thought Scott Kraling was a terrific county clerk, but he got mixed up in romance, and we all know where that leads. So I won't say any more about that. Amanda Lopez Askin reminded us when we did our interview that she took over just a couple weeks before the 2018 election. And that was the election where Xochitl Torres Small defeated Yvette Harrell based on absentee ballots that were counted the day after election night. It got to be 1 or 2 in the morning. Everybody was exhausted. She put the ballots in a secure room, sent everybody home. Yvette Harrell declared victory that night and never has undeclared it. If you ask her today, I think she still thinks she was the rightful winner. She'll say, you know, all these ballots mysteriously turned up overnight. They didn't, but that's what she will say. So a lot of our discussion was on that. Amanda Lopez Askin talked about the need for more transparency. One of the things I remember, I was working in the Sun News newsroom. They declared a winner that night as well. They declared Harrell. They didn't. It wasn't. We think she's a winner, but I forget how they put it. But they shouldn't have. We shouldn't have. I was there. I was part of that. So that was part of the confusion as well. But she talked about the need to be more transparent, and also we talked a little bit about. I didn't know if there had been a resolution of the court case, and this gets to be a little bit in the weeds, but what is required on the ballot itself and what is required on the envelope in terms of signatures and dates and all of that. And apparently that is still pending in the Supreme Court, which, you know, seems odd. Here we are with another election coming up and that hasn't been resolved yet, is my understanding. She is facing Cheryl DeYoung, and really there wasn't much. The truth is there's not a lot of news in any of these first races that we've done. The challengers haven't brought out anything new, or, you know, it's been pretty pedestrian, or there's been nothing that you would say, oh man, this is the newspapers want to know about this right away kind of thing. So anyway, that's the county clerk race. The county treasurer is always a difficult one for me, to be honest, because I don't know a whole lot about banking and finance and what the county treasurer does. And so, you know, back when David Gutierrez was the treasurer and he was accused of, well, not only accused of, admitted to sexual harassment, that's pretty easy. He's a bad guy. We need to get rid of him. Beyond that, Eric Rodriguez was Mr. Gutierrez's deputy, and that seemed to be the one blemish against him. Was he going to bring Mr. Gutierrez back? Was he going to sever those ties? It seems that the ties have been severed, and he's facing Bernadette DeRazio. There wasn't really a whole lot to that race in terms of differences or, you know, competing beliefs. And like I said, a lot of it went over my head anyway, because it's about finance and stuff I don't understand. So anything about those before I go on to county commission? Okay, so county commission, there are going to be 3 races or 3 seats up this year. The seat in District 2 is already decided. And that was decided in the primary when Diana Maria Trujillo defeated the incumbent Jesus Gonzalez. And so there is no Republican in that district. And that's been the Democrat typically runs uncontested in those South County districts a lot. So that one is decided. Diana Maria Trujillo will be the new county commissioner. In District 4, that is the seat that is currently held by Isabella Solis. She ran as a Democrat, defeated Wayne Hancock in the Democratic primary, and then went on to win the seat. This year, she changed her party affiliation to Republican. She and Ramon Gonzalez, the incumbent who was defeated, were consistently together on one block. If you watch the county commission, Manny Sanchez and Shannon Reynolds were the other block, and Lynn Ellens cast the tie-breaking vote consistently on issue after issue after issue. So one of those Democrats was defeated in the primary. The other one changed parties, is now a Republican, and she's going to be running in the House against Joanna Ferrari. So for her seat, it's going to be Susana Chaparro against Stacey Durham. Both of them won three-way races in the primary that were very close. Susie Chaparro is known to a lot of people, former wife of Ken Miyashima, former judge, I think magistrate court judge, I think that's right. She had some issues with the judicial, I can't remember the name of the commission that handles judicial discipline. There were some issues with her family where she was giving preferential treatment, I think was what happened there. Years ago, obviously it has nothing to do with the county commission. So those are the two races for county commission. And no matter who wins, like I said, we're going to get two new commissioners, and that 2-2 split with Lynn Ellens casting the tie-breaking vote, that dynamic is going to change on the new board, regardless of how these races turn out. Anything on county commission? Okay, well, this will be difficult. That's all right. We'll forge ahead, but I'm going to need some questions along the way here. So we started, we've done one of the House races, or two of the House races, I'm sorry, so far. We've done the seat for House District 39. That is the race between Rudy Martinez and Luis Terrazas. This is a district that goes all the way to Silver City. It used to be part of Indiana County. It came into our district as part of redistricting after the last census. John Zimmerman, a Republican, won this seat, I think it was 4 years ago, when Republicans did flip the New Mexico House for the first time since the Eisenhower administration. That was part of making that happen, John Zimmerman winning that seat, defeating Rudy Martinez to take that seat. Martinez came back 2 years later, reclaimed the seat, and is now running for re-election. The other race we did was District 52, and that is more South County, but close South County, going to Anthony. But anyway, that race is between Doreen Gallegos, the incumbent, and John Foreman, who is the superintendent of Mesilla Valley Christian School. And that was one of the better interviews, I thought. Mr. Foreman was willing to part ways with his party on a couple of issues. We asked about both of the gun control bills that were passed in the legislature under Michelle Lujan Grisham. One was background checks, and the other was the so-called red flag bill, where you can petition the court to temporarily take weapons away from somebody. And he was split on those two. He said that he probably would have voted for the background check bill, but against the red flag bill. But on that, his issue was more with the wording of the bill, and you know, it wasn't one of these absolute, you know, slippery slope, my dead hand kind of arguments that you hear frequently from people who will just not listen to anything when it comes to gun control or gun safety, however you want to look at it, legislation. Doreen Gallegos is the highest ranking member of the House from Southern New Mexico. She is the majority whip. And she and I had competing, I guess, columns in the Sun News at the start of last year's legislative session. I wrote, I can't remember if it was a column or an editorial, but I wrote a piece that was complaining about the fact that there are no committee chairmen in the House. There are 25, I think. That may be too many, but it's 20-something committees. There's not a single chairman from south of Albuquerque. I thought that was a problem. And I said so in some kind of an opinion piece. And I got a call back from the speaker, Mr. Agolf, who's a bright guy and respectful. And he said, well, you know, 2 of those seats are really not, they don't really deal with bills. One is engrossing and enrolling, and I forget what the other one is. And he said, you know, those are seats that we just give to freshmen that we want to pay attention to. And my point was, well, that makes it even worse. I mean, you're not even throwing us a bone on the ceremonial stuff. So anyway, and her point, I should tell her point is that we have 2 members on the Finance Committee, which has the final say on all spending bills. And historically, that doesn't happen. Traditionally and historically, we only get 1 member. And so by putting 2 members on that committee, we have given up one of our chairmanships, and, you know, kind of horse trading that goes on in Santa Fe. And she, you know, made the point that her being the number 3 position, that she could make sure that we're well represented. And we did on all of these. Well, I shouldn't say all of these. We've only done 2 of the House races so far. But I should say that the issues that obviously, the first issue I'm bringing up is the budget. At one, they passed a budget right before the session ended, right as news was coming out of China about the virus. And it had no factor, no consideration at all in the budget they passed. So it was just way overblown. They budgeted for way more. And then the other thing that hit them, the double whammy right at that time, was if you'll remember, there was a dispute between Russia and the Soviet Union that sent the price of oil, for a day, it was negative something. I remember Seth Meyers, one of them, did a joke that you pull up to a gas station, you fill up your tank, and you go in and you take a couple of Slim Jims to make up the difference. So he told it better than I did, but anyway, you get the point. So anyway, on all of these, anytime we talk with House members, with members of the legislature, that's the first thing I'm bringing up, because they are still under a court order to increase funding, or at least maintain substantial funding, or adequate funding, I think is the word, for education. So at one point, right at the height of that, they were talking about they may be $2 billion short. It's not going to be that bad. But if Congress does not pass additional help for the states, and it doesn't look like they're going to, there is going to be a budget crunch. I think, Paul, you can weigh in on this.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question, and I agree with you. I don't think we have, unless things change at the national level, and I worked there for many years, I think that we're going to have, our budget's going to suffer really bad. I don't know how they're going to meet that education standard.
Yeah, yeah. And I have the same concerns for county and city. I remember John Arthur Smith telling me, city especially, county gets a lot from property tax, and that will be impacted, I think, because people can't pay. And if you can't pay, you can't pay. But the treasurer has no forgiveness on that. I mean, it goes, I think, 3 years, and then it goes through the process. And there's, go ahead, Paul.
No, I agree with you. I think we're, and not just New Mexico, but all states, if they don't pass any stimulus with a lot of taxes not being paid by businesses not functioning, whether it's restaurants, hotels, I don't care, casinos, you name it.
That's right.
It's a real problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Besides education, the primary cost to the states is corrections. And we don't need the number of prisons that we have or the number of corrections officers. We can save a lot of money there by getting people out of the prisons who really, they're not benefiting from being there. We are not benefiting from having them there.
Yeah, I agree. Any nonviolent crime, they shouldn't be in prison.
That's right.
Well, and I don't know if you saw the story in the Sun News this week, and I'm trying to think. Susan Dunlop was the reporter. But it was about the fact that they were bringing people into that Otero County facility during the height of the AIDS crisis, or not AIDS, I'm sorry, during the height of the COVID pandemic. And that's when our numbers exploded as a county, and that was all coming from that South County area. Michaela Cadena had a bill that I don't think ever got out of the starting gate, but it would target those private prison facilities that we have in the state and would prohibit them from taking immigration detainees. I don't know if there's any support for that in the legislature or not, but I thought it was an interesting thing to throw out there and see.
You know, I think there's growing interest in the legislature due to the Black Lives Matter issues and the defunding corrections. And, you know, this is where we're going to have to go. This is mass incarceration. It is racially based almost entirely. And, you know, we're going to have to change our approach.
I agree. And then just getting back to the other three issues that I'm bringing up with everybody, budget is always my first one. But tied to that is the coronavirus. New Mexico has been, by and large, more restrictive, certainly than our neighboring states, when you look at Texas and Arizona, and even to a lesser extent, Colorado. And that has served us well health-wise. You can make an argument that it has cost us economically a higher price. And we have a situation now where our kids are still out of school, where in some of the other states, they're putting their kids in school and plowing ahead anyway. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And that has probably gotten some of the best discussion, because it's one of those things that I have mixed feelings about. I think a lot of people, I don't envy the governor at all, being the one person having to decide precisely, you know, when can I open up this, when can I open up that? And anything she does, the one complaint that came up over and over again is you shut down the mom and pops and you let Walmart stay open. You know, we heard that over and over and over again. And I had that same argument. Now, her explanation is it's easier for us to target one Walmart, or not target, to regulate and monitor one Walmart than it is 100 mom and pops. I get that. I would still disagree with it, but anyway, that has been, I think, probably the most interesting debate. Just because obviously, Go ahead.
I think she's done a fabulous job, though, in maintaining, so far as the numbers and the deaths and everything else. I think the state of New Mexico has done very well from handling the coronavirus.
Yeah, what I was going to say is we are now orange, but when they had that color coded map that shows all of the states, and for a long time there's Texas bright red on one side of us, and Arizona bright red on the other side, and Colorado red on top, and we're sitting there yellow, an island of yellow, and now we're orange, so it doesn't look quite as good. Symbolically. But even at that, I think she is going to have difficult, moving forward, she and the school board. I mean, everybody, I thought it was a very interesting story today about the Catholic school.
Yes, I saw that too. But they can control their number of students, and they're not letting any more in, and they can be more disciplined than you can in public schools.
That's exactly right. They can impose greater control. And I'm going to be curious to see. I mean, they are laying out, it sounds like, all the correct protocols.
Me too. I read that article. It's an excellent article.
But then the next question is, do you get 6 and 7 and 8 year olds to comply 100% with those protocols?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The other two issues on the legislature that I think, that we're trying to focus or highlight, I talked before about the 2 gun bills. I don't think anything's going to come up about that again. But I think I think that's going to be a big issue in sheriff's races. I think it should be. Will you enforce the law? And I think certainly how people respond to that is telling, even if that issue may not. I think the governor got what she wanted, I guess, is what I'm saying. So that may not come up moving forward, but it's still worth a discussion, I think. And then the last one, that will come up moving forward, no doubt, is marijuana legalization. And the governor really took a strong run at that this year. She put together a task force that Sheriff Kim Stewart sort of took the lead on here in Doñana County, held meetings all over the county. And then it was kind of interesting. Sheriff Stewart really kind of kept her opinion to herself until the legislature was in session. And then she came out in opposition. I would say, we can never do this. This is the demon, not that kind of opposition, but opposition not ready yet at this time. Don't yet have an effective, reliable roadside test, I think, is one of her big concerns, and Joseph Cervantes, one of his big concerns as well. I've got him later on my list. He's up for re-election, as are all the senators this year. But that bill died. He is now the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and that bill died in his committee. And I asked him straight up, are you opposed to any legalization bill or just this one? And he said it was the details in this bill. One of the things, for example, was the bill gave preference actually to people who had prior convictions. The thinking behind that was that over the years, the law has disproportionately impacted minorities and poor people and has ruined a lot of lives. And this would be a small way to help some of those people, to help make amends to some of those people. Of course, the flip side of that is, we need to have tight control over what has in the past been an illegal substance, and you don't want to open the door to just anybody. So let me open the door on that, on the marijuana issue. Anybody?
Well, I've taught at the university, our community college now here for 12 years. And I set up opposite views on different topics, and I've set up, and so I have them present ideas on it. The marijuana is one I've had for 12 years. And I can tell you young people feel quite strong about the necessity of having less restrictive marijuana laws.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not surprising, but I'm just saying that I've noticed that for 12 years that I've been here.
As a substance abuse counselor for many years, I strongly support legalization. It's ridiculous to criminalize these people.
Yeah.
Some do have addictions, but most are it's just a thing to do. It's actually not a terrible drug. You know, my opinion is legalize them all, but especially marijuana. Nobody's ever overdosed on marijuana.
Well, I think it's safer than
Nobody's ever died from marijuana. A lot of people are benefited. That's why we have medical marijuana. I mean, it's ridiculous. What are we waiting for? No, alcohol is far, far worse. And it's
smoking and alcohol are both worse.
Well, smoking will kill you. Alcohol actually kills other people when you run into them.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's,
Yeah, I would say that I understand people who have concerns about both the physical health and the mental health aspects. I mean, I think there's reason for looking into both of those things more closely. The one thing I think is just undeniable is that those laws have been enforced in a way over the years that they have not been enforced uniformly. They have been enforced in a way that has allowed us to warehouse huge proportions of our minority communities in prison. And you know, no matter how you feel about the health aspects, and I think there's room for debate, but when it comes to how we have enforced that law over the years, to me, there is no debate. I mean, the numbers are just undeniable.
And why is the debate different from what the debate around alcohol? Yeah. Alcohol is far more injurious health-wise in every other way, and yet we just accept that people, I mean, they have a little wine with their dinner, and some of them get addicted. But it's legal, and we don't try to regulate it, and we don't have these funny attitudes about it. We've developed strange attitudes about a weed.
Yeah, well, I have a son who's smoked marijuana for 40 years, and he's still fairly reasonable.
Hey, could we get back to that? Could we get back to the House races in our area? I know that you've only had an opportunity to interview a couple of the candidates for a couple of the districts, but what is the status of the Solis-Ferrari competition?
Okay, very good. That is going to be one of the two interviews that we're going to do on Wednesday. We're going to have that race at 9 o'clock Wednesday, again on KTAL. And so, all I can tell you right now is Joanna Ferrari is, I think this will be her third term that she is seeking. And, she is probably best known for introducing the bill that would take the old abortion law off the books. That's her bill. I think it's safe to say that is the bill that probably got Mary Kay Papin and John Arthur Smith defeated this year in the primary. Both of them voted against that bill in the Senate. It passed the House, did not pass the Senate. Joanne Ferrari, I have no doubt, will bring it up again. There will be a new Senate this year, and I suspect that will go through easily this year. But so in terms of where those two stand on the issues, like I said, that debate we're going to have that on Wednesday. But I could tell you, watching Isabella Solis on the county commission over the last 4 years has been an interesting evolution, I think, would be, one of the ways to put it. To me, it really, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, I would say devolution.
Yes, yes, that would be another way to put it.
We're so lazy.
I would say it started over the transportation issue, the running buses into the rural parts of the county, where for whatever reason she and Commissioner Gonzalez really sort of split with the commission on that issue, and it seems like that split has held on issue after issue after issue since then. And my first question to her is going to be, why did you change your party? What was it about the Democratic Party that you could no longer abide? And what is it about the Republican Party that makes you feel more at home? So I think, that is, I suspect, going to be one of the more better listened to shows. That is certainly one of the more interesting races.
Yeah.
Do you know, has there been any polling that's been done on that particular race by anybody? Do you have any results from that?
No, I don't think there has. I know years and years ago when Jose Garcia taught the government class at NMSU, he would have students do polling on local races. But and the guy at Brian Senderhoff in Albuquerque will do polling on statewide races, and he'll do polling on, the congressional races. But I'm not aware of anybody doing polling on state legislative races.
Joanne is very well known and very well supported by at least the Democratic supporters. Love her. So
I'm trying to think who held that seat before her, and I'm drawing a blank, but it does seem to me that maybe it was Mary Helen Garcia, but it seems to me that's been a Democratic seat ever since I've been here, I believe.
No,
Republican. What's that?
Oh, you don't have your mute off, Jenny?
it was the Republican doctor named Mullen.
Okay, Ed Boykin was my next door neighbor. He had that seat when we moved there, here.
That was Terry McMillan?
Huh?
Terry McMillan?
Ed Boykin had that seat.
Boykin.
And then
Mullen.
Okay.
Dr. Mullen.
what?
You are both right. Ed Boykin was the former school superintendent. He was a Republican. And then Terry McMullen is a ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Yeah, he was. And he had it. And
That's right.
and I know Jim, my deceased husband, Jim, actually worked on Joanne Ferrari's campaign when she was trying to defeat Terry. And then she finally did defeat him, and she got that position.
Thank you for jogging my memory. That was the race that she lost by 7 votes, something like that, the first time?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I remember now that her whole thing was that she would be a full-time legislator. Terry was still working at that time and never went to any of the interim meetings. I mean, he just refused to go. And I think that cost him. But you're right. That district is more conservative, more Republican than I had thought.
Yeah. And, I know. And what was I going to say? Oh, I know. And Joanne was very much involved. I mean, she'd go up to the legislature all the time before she was in it. And she was also very much involved with the drunk driving issue.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that professionally, that's what she did before she ran for office. Was she was involved with helping the state run that program, I think.
And then during her first couple of attempts to win the seat, she was very active in raising the minimum wage in Las Cruces.
That's
with her
right.
work through
Yeah.
CAFE.
Yep, that's right. That's
Correct.
right. So you reminding me about how competitive that seat has been in the past. With somebody with name recognition running for the Republican Party, that could be a very interesting race to keep an eye on, I think. The other one we're going to talk to, or the other candidates we're going to talk to Wednesday in the 8 o'clock hour, will be Nathan Small, and this is District 36. He's running for re-election against Brandy Polanco. And I know one of the other big issues that we're going to talk about with Nathan is the PRC constitutional amendment. That is
I was going to ask you about that, as to what your feeling is about that.
Well, I wrote a column. I almost never do this. I wrote a column where I haven't made up my mind yet. I don't know. I feel very, very strongly that there needs to be more expertise on that board. And I've just seen, when I was, for 2 years, I was the Santa Fe Bureau reporter for the Sun News. And, you know, I felt a real pressure to turn out stories even in dead times. And so I would go over and cover the PRC a lot because I knew nobody else would be there. And there'd always be something. I would have to get somebody to explain it to me because it would all be over my head, but there would always be stories to have. And what struck me was how much more knowledgeable and informed the staff was than most of the commissioners. There were some, like I said, there are a lot of commissioners who know the way to every Rotary Club in their district, and you know, they can backslap and they know all of the, you know, who are the power brokers in every community. And but when it comes to you know, energy regulation, they don't have a clue.
I've studied in economics. We've studied the whole issue of regulation commissions quite widely, and I can tell you, and generally they're captured by the people they regulate, and it's just a matter of fact. And especially when you have people voting for them, because then you don't have, they're not voting on expertise. They're, you know, anybody can run for these commissions, and very few of them have any expertise, and they're only there because the people they're regulating are financing their campaigns. Let's be honest about it.
That's exactly right. But that is the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is giving up electoral power, and you can't have both of those. So I'm okay. But having a 3-person board appointed by the governor,
I don't like.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm thinking of voting against it in hopes that they come back 2 years later, and 2 years later, and try it again, the same thing, but only a different, you know, make it a 5-person board and change the oversight a little bit. But
yeah.
I still might vote for it.
I'm just thankful that Steve Fishman's on there now and is a new chair. And
that's exactly right.
And I
But he's supporting the change.
He is.
Yeah, and yes, and I support the change.
Which makes me wonder.
That 3-person board, I don't like that. 3-person.
Right. And I'm not making an allegation here. I'm just wondering if Steve has had a conversation with the governor where, you know, if this thing goes the other way, and I don't, maybe that will be grandfathered in. I'm not sure how that part works. So
I talked to Steve, and he indicated he's not sure it's going to be successful. In other words, transferring, because people just don't like to give up the idea of voting.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so that Nathan, getting back to Nathan Small, he's been instrumental in both that and also the clean energy bill that the legislature passed in the last session. I think he was one of the sponsors of that. And that has kind of got snagged in the PRC over the issue of closing the San Juan generating plant and how PNM is going to get reimbursed for that. I think that's still tied up in the courts. So, you know, we'll talk to him about all the other issues that, you know, the House will deal with, but that's another one that Nathan, I know we're going to want to get into. And so once again, that'll be this Wednesday, 8 o'clock. We'll have, or do I have, yeah, 8 o'clock will be I have that wrong. Oh, I can't look it up. I think it's Small and Polanco at 8 o'clock and Ferrari and Solis at 9 o'clock. I think that is right. So Nathan Small and Polanco at 8 o'clock, Brian Ferrari and Isabella Solis at 9 o'clock. And then after that, on Wednesday, September 30th, we'll have the House District 35 race. That will be Angelica Rubio and Rochelle Ponder. Rochelle Ponder, I don't know much at all about her, but she does have a website. If you want to learn more, it's Richelle, and it's spelled kind of funny. It's RICHELLE Ponder 4NM. The letter, or I'm sorry, the number 4, not spelled out. So it's Richelle Ponder, the number 4NM, or just Google Richelle Ponder. And she does have her own website where you can find out a little bit more about her. I believe she's running for the first time. Then on Friday, October 2nd, we'll have the House District 34 race. That's Ray Lara against Don Ladd. Ray Lara, this is another one of those South County seats that Republicans have not always contested. Ray Lara beat Bill Queen, goes by both, Gomez, in the Democratic primary 2 years ago, and then was uncontested in the general. He beat Mr. Gomez again in the primary this year. He will have a contested race this year in the general. But once again, that's a district that has been reliably Democratic and that many years has not been contested. On October 7th, we're going to have Michaela Cadena against Beth Miller. And Beth Miller is one of 2 candidates who have declined our invitation to come on. The other was in the county commission race, and that was Rob Fora. He is running against. Who is he running against? The commissioner, Mounting Sanchez. And so, what we do in those cases is instead of doing a 1-hour interview with both candidates, we'll just do a half hour, with a candidate who agrees to come on. And I also was not able to find any kind of candidate website for Beth Miller. This happens to be the district that I live in. I think it's the same district that the church is in as well. You guys are just up the block from me, House District 33. So I honestly can't tell you much about Beth Miller other than the fact that, she originally accepted our invitation. She was one of the first. And then 2 or 3 days later, I got a second email saying, well, I've heard that you and Peter are real liberal and that your audience is real liberal, and it sounds to me like it's going to be a trap. I emailed back and I said, well, Peter and I have both written weekly columns for years, and so you can read those and decide for yourself. But both of us understand that as a moderator, you're more of a referee than a participant, and it's not our job to express our opinions. It's our job to allow the candidates a forum where they can express their opinions. And I told her that we had done these for the primary, and what she should do is listen to those and get back to me. I don't know if she ever did, but she did get back to me.
I have a question. Are these all these listed on your website, KTAL website, or not, of when people are going to be interviewed?
They are.
So we can all go to the website, and because I'm jotting some things down, but I thought you probably did have it on the website.
As you say, I'm very disappointed that you're not taking notes, but yes.
Walt, this is Elisa. Good morning. Buenos dias to everybody. I wanted to just ask you and Peter to a lot of the Republicans like Isabella and these other people have become Republicans because of the abortion issue. And on that, they call themselves pro-life. I always want to say, okay, if you're pro-life, are you supporting better health for everybody? Because everybody has a life. We all are people. We all have lives. If you care about pro-life, are you pro-child, good health care? Are you pro-child, good education? All of those are pro-life issues. And we never, ever ask those questions. We just accept, well, pro-life, these people are pro-birth. And nobody ever pushes them to ask, well, life goes on beyond just being born. So I would like to see you and Peter sort of ask some of those questions.
Here, here, Elisa, bless you. Those are the questions that need to be asked.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, a poor black woman with 3 children and a black guy comes in every once in a while and does his thing. What's she supposed to do? I face it.
That's stereotypical, Paul. Stop it.
Yeah.
No. Well, I'm just saying. In
If
Washington,
you're saying it wrong, it's mostly white people who are on welfare and having babies.
the reason I bring that up is in Washington, D.C., I had a lot of black women working for me. And they were facing this. I know I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it that way, but that's my experience in Washington, D.C. And they would just come in and just bawl their hearts out. And they couldn't get an abortion, or they just didn't have any way to deal with it. Didn't have money to get birth control.
Well, I think it's a fair point, and I think it's a question that we should ask. You know, when the abortion topic comes up, how long does that commitment extend for? Is it only until birth, or you know, what obligation? I remember distinctly years and years ago when we did have editorial board meetings. We're running out of time. Is that right? Are we done at 3?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll tell this story real quickly. We had 2 candidates come in different races and tell the exact same story about a 15, 16-year-old girl comes in and she wants to rent an apartment and she wants to get a discounted rate for expectant mothers. And the guy renting the apartment says, well, are you pregnant? And she says, well, not yet, but I'm going to so I can get the rate. That's the anecdote. So both Republican candidates come in and tell that anecdote. And I asked them both the exact same question. What obligation do you think the government has to that child after it's born? And both of them immediately, when they heard that child, thought about the 14-year-old and not the baby. Once I got them to wrap their heads around the fact that I was asking them about this baby born to a 14-year-old girl who has no place to live, okay, I understand you want to punish the girl. I understand that. What obligation do we have to that baby? And none of them had an answer for that question. Anyway, I do know that we're getting ready to wrap up. I wanted to say something real quick, guys, for the presentation that you invited me to shortly after I was asked to resign from the Sun News. When I got into newspapers, people used to retire. They used to work for long years and years and then on their own decide to retire. And they used to have retirement parties and send-offs. And
in your
I held
business,
it
it
in my
doesn't
head.
happen.
I was going to say, I held it in my head for a long time that I would have that. But anyway, you guys, your reception for me was as close as I will get to that, and I will be forever grateful for that. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks again for the invitation. It's been an interesting discussion.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, next week, Jim Peach and I are going to talk about the demise of America. And there's a couple of articles that we're going to refer to. And I'm sure it'll be a great discussion. I'll summarize these articles, and then both Jim Peach and I will talk a little bit, and then we'll look for a discussion.
Sounds great.
That's great. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great afternoon. And remember that this will be up on our YouTube page or the UUCLC YouTube page for you guys to look back if you want to, you know, remember some of the stuff that was talked about here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.